Good afternoon. Hey, everybody. We're happy to have you here. Hope you're enjoying your day at ETL Vegas. We want to start. Before we start, we want to say thank you to our title sponsor, who is Hotel Map. And if you'd like to use the headsets, feel free. It sounds pretty good. If you want to check out the Spanish language AI, hit the little white button and it'll take it from blue to yellow. Don't hit it too hard, otherwise you'll turn off the headset. So if you want to do that, that's fine. We just found out that there are still tickets available if you're interested in going to the ETL Awards tonight. You can get your tickets right outside where you picked up your badges at the show management office, and they've got more information there. Closed captions are all here to our left. We want to thank Interprify for doing so. And we do want to thank our friends at Silent Conference for the headsets. And lastly, if you have any questions, you can submit them on the QR code up there or raise your hands and we'll just bring the mic over. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start. My name is Stephanie Selesnik, and I'm president of International Trade Information. We're a Las Vegas-based consultancy. We help internationalize trade shows, one expo at a time, all over the world. And I also blog for Exhibition World and other particular places.
And I'm Josiah Talby, co-founder of GoLucid. We are a research and consulting firm that specializes in event technology. And ultimately what we do is help people source the right technology.
All right, so let's start.
Great, so give me a second here. Yeah, I got it right here. All right, so this is, well, first and foremost, this is strategies for a seamless event tech selection. And this is our sort of expert guide to this process. And I think what we really want to get across today is, when I looked at this title, I sort of laughed to myself because I thought, is this process even seamless? And the reality is it's not. It's complex, right? But the steps that you take can certainly influence where it can be seamless, and where I think you want it to be seamless is with the engagement with the vendors that you're looking at, right? When you have seamlessness there, that's where you're going to have good tech selection. Second is
the simple steps that anybody can use. The steps are easy. The work is work. That's why it's called work. It's not called fun. But if you do the homework and you do what we advise you to do, it's going to end up giving you a really solid roadmap to move forward and making sure that any holes you have in your tech or any new things you want to add to your tech, you have an idea of what you're doing, what your goal is, and why you need it.
Absolutely. And as someone wise once said to me, this is free advice, so take it for the value that it is. Additionally, we want to kind of discuss the importances of both sides because it is a two-way conversation. You as the event producer, right, are the one that's out there looking for the technologies, and the vendors who produce the technologies are ultimately looking for you. So there's always two sides to the coins.
And then lastly, you'll have a roadmap to be able to design your own strategy for your needs.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you do want to have some sort of strategy, but getting to a strategy sometimes takes doing the work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so we're going to do a quick poll here. Hopefully you guys can get the QR code up top. I'm going to ask a question, and then after I ask the question, I'll let you guys do the poll. I did put the right answer up there, right? But we'll give you guys some time to look at it, think about it, and give us the appropriate answer. So the question is, what do you think is most important for seamless tech selection?
Where's the QR code?
It'll be on the next slide,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm going to bring this up. And if you can get that QR code. Now, I know this is difficult because there's three choices.
We'll give everybody a minute
Yeah,
to
we'll
log
give it a
in.
minute.
Oh, look.
Oh, we got some stuff coming in.
We have some people who like to cook. Excellent.
Couple more seconds, a few more people trying to grab it.
We have less people that like to cook, apparently.
So as you can see, there was only one answer. I made this easy for you guys, right? And that's because the most important thing is time, right? If you don't give yourself adequate time, you can't do this correctly. And it's a mistake I often see when working with people, right? They come to me with a crisis. We've got to do this and we got to do this by this time, right? And inevitably, if you're going to do it that way, mistakes are going to be made. You're not going to ask the questions you need. You're not going to get to where you want to be. You're going to solve that problem maybe partially as good as it could. And so giving yourself time is the most important thing.
It really is. I mean, if you're not doing a Chinese fire drill where you've got to get a solution right now, or something is bombed out in your tech stack and you need a replacement because your event's in 2 weeks or your event's in a month, this is different. You're looking at a strategy. So you want to make sure you take the time and you don't rush through the process. And you'll be glad that you did in the end because it'll give you a much better outcome as a result.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about time, which also sort of coincides with budget, right? When I say time, do I mean we just finished producing our event, we're going into our next event, we've decided we want to change this vendor, we're going to start that process now? Definitely not, right? That's just not enough time, right? So really, you want to be thinking a year out from whenever you think that technology is going to begin being implemented, right? Which is essentially where you're starting to do the work, right? That's going to make a huge difference, and we'll kind of come back to this, right? So you'll hear me say, and so what's the most important thing? And you guys are going to say?
Can't hear you.
Lovely, lovely. You'll see how it all kind of comes together.
The other thing is budget. I mean, how many of you that are planners, how many of you are planners in the audience in some way, organizers? There's a few. How many of you have been told the budget is no? Or, oh, the budget's been cut, right? So you really have to have a realistic budget in mind. And sometimes the solutions that you find are going to be a little more expensive. But if you can show why there is savings in the end, that's the way that you want to approach it to your higher ups. And that's how you want to sell whatever it is you're doing. To come back to it, if you've got a strategy and you can show where it fits in and where it's going to solve problems that you've had in the past and anticipation for better customer experience in the future, right? And save money eventually, not in 10 years down the line, of course. That's what you want to do. So you always want to keep the budget in mind of what you've got, and that is going to help you prioritize what it is that you can do given the resources you have.
Right, and think about this. A lot of times pricing doesn't come until after you've engaged with the vendor. So how do you even really know what your budget is supposed to be? Which brings me back to time. If you have enough time to go through that process and look at those things, right, then in essence you can come back to your budget, make the adjustments where you need them to be made to ensure that you're able to use the solution you actually want to use. It's not necessarily whether it's cheap or expensive. It's about whether it's right and whether, if it's right, it's worth paying for. So I'll kick this one off. So the next step is taking inventory, right? And I think another common mistake that's made is that people don't sit down and say, what exactly lives in my event tech stack, right? They don't sit down and do that inventory. We're all familiar with the stakeholder process, right? If you're going to build a project, you're going to identify all the stakeholders. If you don't identify those stakeholders, when you start to go through that process, at some point when you get to where that stakeholder was supposed to be, it's going to create a problem in that project, right? It's no different. All the technologies that you're using sort of coincide and work together, right? So take inventory, sit down, build that list. Now, there are other steps that are going to happen with that, right? That might be more complicated, but that basic step will at least give you the idea of what's in your ecosystem. And if you know what's in your ecosystem, it'll be a lot easier to understand how they're connected together. And additionally, when you engage with the vendors, right, which you want to be seamless, you'll be able to help them understand what that ecosystem looks like and where they're going to play a role in that ecosystem.
The other thing is, of course, how many of you use Google Sheets, Excel? Put that in on your list. Because what is it? It's tech that you're using, isn't it? It's software you're using. So you really want to go micro on this. You don't want to go general. You want to have an actual list of everything and what it's used for. That's part of the inventory. What are we using it for? Are there better solutions out there? Well, you'll have to find out, and we'll come to that in a little bit. So make sure with your inventory, you're really micro in what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Get that list. It'll help you when you start to kind of connect the dots and bring everything together. After that is sort of needs and order of importance. Now, people always say, well, what's your goals, right? And that's good. You should be setting those goals. But when we talk about needs, right, we're really whittling down to where the biggest problems are, right? And that's where I look at order of importance. Sometimes when you're looking at these things, there are certain things that just need to be solved before you start to accomplish your goals, right? If the problem isn't fixed or isn't working correctly, it's going to continue to be a problem. And when you start to look at that future trajectory and you're like, hey, here's what we're trying to do, you start to make that effort, that problem's still there, it's going to continue to create problems.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to solve for it. And think about it, really, what is your biggest pain point? And what's immediate, right? What needs to be changed? Maybe what's going to be the most expensive or the biggest change? Is your CRM system integrating in? Is your floor plan integrating with the current accounting that your organization has? These are things that you want to be thinking about in terms of importance. And if you're looking in terms of, is it going to help my team work better, or is it going to help the client have a better experience interacting with us? I would go for the second, to be honest. There are workarounds, you've been using them for years, but if you can give the better experience for the client, that's something to really think about. Because ultimately, they don't care how you got that invoice generated. They don't care how they want their name spelled right. That's a big one, right? We've all had clients who lose their minds because their name is spelled incorrectly. And so those kinds of things are important in terms of your importance and how you're and how you're doing everything.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So you identify those needs, then you sort of prioritize. Once you have an idea of how you're going to prioritize, again, this is going to change the way that you go about the process of research and the process of engagement and the process of documentation. So it's really important to make sure that you've got the order in place, right? And that you're looking at that strategy and understanding where you're going to hit each of the items as you're building that strategy. Okay, so once you've got that order of importance in place, it's really good to kind of understand personas and workflows, right? Like, what types of personas are you dealing with, right? One of those personas could be the people who are attending your event, and within that event, there's probably different personas there. So make sure you identify all those personas. The other thing to take into consideration is the team that's producing the event is also a persona that interacts with that technology, that plays some sort of role in the outcome for the user, right? So you have to also think about those personas and understand the workflows that are associated with them. Even the vendor is a persona that you have to take into consideration, right? And as long as you're looking at all three of them, it's going to be a lot easier to make sure that you're addressing those personas, understanding their roles as it plays in the selection process, and helps you as you start to think about what that workflow looks like, right? And the workflow can be, sit down and ask yourself, what is this process going to be simply mapped out for this attendee, right? They're going to get an email communication, they're going to register, they're going to do this. It doesn't have to be some complex workflow, just something simple for you to understand what's going on. So again, you can provide the vendor some idea of what they're trying to solve and help them, not sell you on their product, but help you understand how their product's actually going to make a difference.
Yeah, the other thing you want to take into account are the personalities that you work with and who's going to be implementing the technology and using it. How many of us work with people who are tech resistant, right? They thought that when websites were invented, they were going to take away trade shows. I mean, seriously. So you want to think about those personas. And any vendors that you're talking to, you want to take into account what is their process for onboarding people? Is it really complicated? Is it easier? Can they modify it for the people that are going to be working with the technology, or do they have just one way and that's it? So those are some things to take into consideration as well in terms of personas. Also, where are companies located? Are you going to need 24-hour service? Are they across the country? Are they across the planet, right? So you want to think about those things. Some have 24-hour availability because they're global, which may be good at 11 o'clock at night when you're right before a show and you're stuck on something or an event. So these are things that you want to talk about in terms of workflows. The other thing with a workflow is you may want to just get some workflow charts off the internet and try to, modify them so you can have a visual picture of what is that process. Because when you have it and you can see it in front of you, it's easier to share with any vendors that you're going to go to.
Absolutely. So now that you've gone through these steps, right, you should have a good baseline of what you're trying to do. And that should give you the chance to start to put that strategy together. And it is important to develop a strategy, right? All of you who are producing an event, in many cases, right, you're going to put together some sort of 2-year, 3-year strategy and present it to someone of importance to help them understand what you're doing. You should have the same strategy for your event technology, right? Sit down and ask yourself, what does that plan need to be? What are we trying to do? What types of experiences are going to tie to this technology? What are things we're not doing that certain technologies might be able to offer us the opportunity to do, and develop some sort of strategy. Keep in mind, though, strategies can change, right? And as you go through the process of implementation and working with the vendor, you might adjust things as you go. But if you have a plan, it's going to make a huge difference in the end, right? If you're just looking at the vertical, I need to solve for X, right? I've got to solve for registration, right? It's just not enough information. You need to look holistically and take everything into consideration and try to connect the dots. That's also going to make a huge difference when you start to look at the technologies, because as you know, and they were on stage earlier today, Leanne and Kristen, talking about all-in-one, right? Versus sort of what was the word?
What, the cooperative competition.
Cooperative competition, right? There's different solutions that do different things. Some of them are hands-on, some of them require support, some of them have different models for support. There's many different things that have to be taken into consideration when you're looking at that technology that then have to come back into your strategy, right? That supports your personas and workflows, that supports was it inventory before that, right?
Yeah.
And so again, brings me back to my point of if you don't have enough time in this process, right, there's no way you're going to be able to go through this, do what you need to do, and build a strategy that makes sense, let alone be able to implement it effectively.
Yeah. The other thing is there something that you wish, gosh, I wish there was this technology that could do this, right? We all have those thoughts of, I wish there was a tech that would do this. Well, if you walk around the show floor here, and we're all getting bombarded every single day, that may well exist. That may be something as a side adjunct that somebody is developing, that you're looking at their products and there's an add-on for it. So go ahead in your strategy and add those things that you wish you had that would make things easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Okay, so this is a big one, and we might spend a little time on it, is to RFP or not to RFP. And I think what I mean by that is, well, first of all, has anybody in here done an RFP? Raise your hand. What about on the vendor side? They've seen an RFP, right? Who thinks RFPs are exhausting? Okay.
Who thinks they suck?
So listen, you don't have to do the RFP. It's not a necessity, right? What we're talking about with some of the things that we've sort of went in order with, right, is that just developing some sort of documentation, right? I think, again, when we talk about seamless, it's about conversation. If you're just going to the vendor and you're going, plop, read this and get back to me by Friday, that's not going to create a seamless experience, right? You got to have dialogue with them. If you give them an RFP, you want to set up time to conduct discovery and have a conversation so they can understand what you've put in that RFP. I've looked at lots of RFPs. I've created lots of RFPs. And I often find that the RFPs are just like a checklist. And, if you give a checklist to somebody, all they got to do is go and check that list, right? That doesn't really tell you a whole lot, right? So although I'm not saying you shouldn't RFP, right, it is a good way to go about it, right? It's not a necessity in the grand scheme of things.
No, I mean, people want a formalized structure of some kind in the process. So within that structure, you can take all the documentation you've created. What's our inventory? What's our strategy? What's our wish list? And you can use that. What's our workflow? Incorporate all of those things that you've already developed into your RFP. It doesn't have to be traditional. It just means request for proposal. We're looking at doing business with you. Give it to people in a way that's easy to understand. Make time available again to go through it. Give them a few days to digest, get questions back from their teams on all the things that you're asking for. And also, within that, say, what are we missing? Right? How many of us forget to put that in? We're talking to experts. These are the people that we're sending stuff out to. And in all of your RFPs should always include a what are we missing? Is there anything that we may have missed? There may be really cool ideas that they have, or cool products that are in development, or they're beta testing, or they've just rolled out that you don't know about. So go ahead and ask those questions. You're not, we're all in a learning process. Tech is developing and changing so quickly, just like with the AI that we just went through on the last session. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid of that.
Yeah, we often talk about the engagement with the vendor, right? And there's just like all this sort of thought process is that you're the vendor and I'm the customer, and I'm the customer and I demand, and you're the vendor and you deliver, right? But that's, again, not a seamless engagement, right? You are looking for partnerships. Not every company is going to be a partnership, right? And you're not going to determine whether they're going to be a partnership through this process. It's not till you actually start working with them and engaging with them, right, that you'll start to understand where the partnership can foster. But again, if you're not coming to the table with sort of the appropriate information and you're not willing to have a good conversation with them to help them understand, right, and you're just putting it into a document and expecting a response, well, you're going to get a response, right? And that just really isn't going to get you where you need to be.
Yeah, do the research, right? You have a big thing on this one. This is one of your big, huge, what people don't do enough of.
And it kind of ties to the RFP, right? All too often I've seen people put an RFP together, contact a company because it said they do it on their website, and handed them the RFP. I mean, it's incredibly inconsiderate, right? Because they've got to look at it, they've got to do a ton of work, right? And then, get it back to you. You took no time to try to get to know kind of who they are and whether they should be looking at your RFP. Your RFP should be going to the people you think you should be working with. It should be 3 or 4 people that you think are a really good fit. And now here's my RFP, right? And help me understand how you're going to be the right selection, right? So if you don't do the research, you're not going to be able to do that, right? Take the time to do the research. Look at different companies. Set up a 30-minute call with them. Let them do their spiel and help you understand kind of what they do and what their little different, their different product offerings are. You don't have to get into the technicalities of the solution, and there's a lot of technicalities when looking at, essentially event technology, right? Do a little research, meet them, engage with them, see how they respond, see how you feel, right? And then start to get into a more in-depth conversation, right? Again, 2 ways. You want to have a conversation with them so you can understand how they're going to help you, right? And you want to help prepare them to understand how they can do that so that when you make the selection with them, you continue to have sort of a seamless implementation.
I'm going to interject right here for any of the vendors in the room, and I think all of the people who run events will agree with me on this. Your demos are too damn long. Cut them in half. Oh my God. Do not give me every single whistle and bell that exists. Give me what I want to know. My time is very limited. My boss needs 10 things from me, and I'm trying to do research in between whatever fires I'm putting out in my job. So if you can make it really succinct, this is what we do. This is how easy it is to do. This is who we can integrate with. And by the way, if you're interested in this, that, and the other, we can take a little bit of time and go through that as well. How many of us have sat through, I just did this the other day, I sat through a taped webinar. Thank gosh, I didn't actually do the live one because the information I needed was in the first 5 minutes and in the last 5 minutes. And the other 50 minutes was literally me skipping through, hoping for the answer I was looking for. So with tech, I know how excited you are. And it's awesome that you've got these phenomenal products. And I don't want to be mean. And I don't want to be the B word, right? But I am a business person and my time is valuable. And so is yours. Shorten the demo.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, again, if you've put some of these things together, right, when you do get into that process of now I have a good idea of who I'm looking at, then you can take the time to give them what you need to actually hear what they have to say, right? The counter to that is, a 1 hour complex demo the first time I meet you is uniquely different than I engaged with you, I have an idea of what you're trying to do, and I think that you might be a good fit. Now I've had you take a look at my documentation and we've conducted a discovery call. And you know what? Now I'm going to allot the time you need to actually walk through this and make sure that I'm making the right decision when I'm looking at this, right?
Think about being on the show floor. You're not going to take an hour of somebody's time doing a demo, right? And you're not going to spend an hour doing a demo. Show me the best part of your whatever it is that you're doing. If as the planner, it's up to us to say, this is what I'm looking for. Do you do that? And they may say, how big is your show? How big is your event? And they may say, we're going to be too big for you or we're too small for you. So, start with the engagement and obviously, again, you want to take the time to develop those relationships, take a look at those demos. And because you've already done your strategy, right, when you're doing the research, before you actually even send out the RFP, take that part that's most important to you that you think that they can solve and say, hey, I know you've got a lot of bells and whistles. Can we just talk about this part of what your product does initially? You can do the full everything later, get trained on it later, but again, time is money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, you can segment the engagements with them, right? So if you do find that you need more information, again, that's part of the research process. It's okay to reach out to them and say, hey, we went through this, we got all this, we still have some more questions, right? Let's talk about it. I always say, do you want someone to come in and sell you for the sake of selling you, right? Because they want to win the business? Or do you want them to really articulate why they can help you and why they're the best decision, right? And so again, the steps that you take to prepare for that and the time you allow yourself will make a dramatic difference in that engagement that will create some seamlessness and ensure that you're making the right tech selection.
Yeah, plus it's better use of your time as well. You know what you're looking for, right?
Absolutely. Okay, this is our last slide. So, why did I put this up there? Because it is a two-way street, right? So I always say engage with respect. Remember that this is time, right? We go back to that RFP example, right? Here's a 22-page RFP. Here you go. Get it back to me by Friday. These people have got events that they're producing, right? They've got customers that they're managing. That's not being, respectful, right? You got to think about their end of the process, right? Do I want you to just go through it and check everything and give me some nonsense response, or I want you to have adequate time to respond to it, right? Again, taking the time to engage with them a little bit and get to know them a little bit before slamming a 22-page document in front of them, right? That's engaging with respect. You're trying to forge a relationship. You're trying to understand each other. You're trying to make sure that you get somewhere.
Yeah, the other thing is, let people know when the decision's going to be made and how it's going to be made, right? And then have the courtesy to not ghost people, but have the courtesy to let them know we selected somebody else we think is a better fit. And you may have some constructive criticism for them for the next time that they're going out and doing the process, right? Be kind. Be kind. They didn't get your business. Don't be mean. There's no reason for it. There's no reason to not respect them. Also, never ask people to work over a long weekend. If you've got plans, chances are good everybody else has plans. So the fact that you didn't get your act together because you didn't have time to do it, push the date out. Push it out, because it's not fair to expect people to give up their entire lives because you couldn't get your act together as a company or an organization. These are people that you want to develop a relationship with. Are you going to go in with them already hating you because you didn't, you pulled a Friday afternoon when you could have done a Tuesday drop, right? So we want to think about that. Common courtesy has not gone out of style, and people appreciate it even more. Even more now, because it's so hard. Like if you call the bank, do you ever get a human? No, right? So people appreciate being treated fairly and with respect.
Yeah, and think about the needs aspect of it, right? you might have a need that needs to be solved, but you're looking at somebody who's really part of your future state goals, right? And again, you've got to solve that need, and you're going to make the decision you're going to make, and it's not going to be with them, and they're going to go, we had this great presentation, and I feel like we're solving this, right? So give them some continuity to that, communicate with them, and at some point you might say, we've solved that need, and now we can transition that strategy, and now you're going to be able to work with them. So if you don't give them the common courtesy, right, you don't allow them to keep in touch with you, right? It's okay for them to know where you're at. Certainly it's like starting the process all over again. Why start the process all over again if you can continue to have good dialogue and good engagement and be honest about where you're at? That goes the same for your budget sometimes, right? Having an honest conversation of where you are. I think a lot of people just go in and they're like, we need it to be the cheapest that it can, right? And so if you have that challenge, right, being respectful, if their pricing comes back to you and it's just like, shell shock, sit down and talk with them and say, this is where we're at and this is kind of what we can do, because if it's just an adjustment of a number that's going to make sure that you're selecting the right solution, that's going to help for a seamless implementation.
Yeah. The other thing is, if your bosses say you have to send it out to 3 vendors and you know who you're going to use already because you've internally made that decision, don't do it. Don't waste other people's time, right? Don't make them think that they're going to spend hours and they're going to use all kinds of resources within their company to pull together real numbers for you if you're not going to use them. It's not nice. It's not nice. Go ahead and refine and refine and refine. But again, it's about engaging with respect. So with that, do we have any questions? Okay, we can... So Josiah, what do you think is the biggest... I have a question for you. What do you think is the... Oh, we have one. All right. Not fall off. Let's see. I'm a founder offering an... Oh. Okay. I'm a founder offering a new niche event tech. My product doesn't fall into traditional tech categories, at least not obviously. Is there any way for me to fit it into the RF process? How, when, where, and any advice for them? That's a good one. Stump the speaker.
Yeah, I think this kind of comes back to that concept of, research, right? Part of the reason you're doing research is to make sure that you're looking at all the opportunities that are out there. I think in terms of getting into the RFP process, right, they're doing the research, right? And then they're going to conduct the RFP, right? So making sure they understand what it is that you do and letting them know, hey, take some time to take a look at what we have, right? So that when you do get to a point to where you're making decisions on that, that we're an option, and when that you can come back and have a conversation with us. And again, we can help you try to decide whether this is a good fit or not a good fit.
Well, I think the other thing is, get out there. Get out there, give information, get content, use social media, use LinkedIn properly. Not, hi, I'm a junior salesperson and I want to sell you something, can we link? Right? No, thank you. Ignore. Instead, really, really put it together. How are you going to publicize what it is that you offer, how unique it is and how special it is, and what is it going to do for the end user, right? What's it going to do for the organizer? What's it going to do for the people that interact with it? If you can't answer those questions, then you're not going to get through to people. You want to make it as easy as possible to be found, right? And if you've got something that's unique and that different, and you've done your research and you're the only one in the space doing it, then get a booth. Don't, carpet bag. Don't outboard at an event like this. Go to all of the different alphabet soups. Go to the association meetings. Go to IAEE. Sponsor at CISO, the summer meeting, not the CEO. Because the people that are going to be getting tech are at the summer conference, not at the CEO conference. Take a look at event tech here. There's a lot of new companies. Take advantage if you're a new company and there's a new space you're trying to get into to get one of those newbie kiosks for a lot less money, because it can be expensive to exhibit. But put yourself out there. Be a thought leader with whatever it is that your product is, and make it easy for people to understand and perhaps that they want. Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Great. So kind of a conclusion, right? Give yourself ample time. In regards to that, right, when you take that concept of research, this is an incredible event to do a lot of research in a short period of time, right? It's not easy to do research. I know I do it every day, every week. I reach out to companies. I go through a conversation to help them understand who I am. I set up time to collect, information from them. I sit through demos, right? I add more companies into my database than I can actually meet with on a regular basis. So
how many do you have, out of curiosity?
What's that?
How many tech companies do you have in your database?
I have over 400 companies in my database, and I don't even think that that's the complete list. But it's like a mountain to climb. I'm constantly climbing the mountain. I think, all right, here we go. We're doing good. And then it's like, bam, 50 companies go into my database in 1 week, right? So again, if you come back to that time and you really are taking the time, you're taking the steps to get to a point to where you can develop that strategy, you can come to an event like this in 2 days, knock out quite a bit of research, identify some companies, and then say, hey, now that I've got an idea of what this company does, now I can use Google to run a search to see if there are some alternative options so that I'm making sure that I'm seeing what's out there, right? So think about this event, right? Think about that in terms of your strategy, account for the timing for when it's going to be here, and use an event like this to conduct a large amount of research in a relatively short period of time.
The other thing is referrals are good, but they're not everything. If your event is not the same as the people referring the company to you, it may not be a good fit. So while, it's always good to talk to happy customers, but if their event isn't similar in size or scope to yours, every event is unique and different. We know that. But the whole point is, make sure that you're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges when it comes to referrals.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, create a complete inventory. Make sure it's complete, right? Don't forget Excel or other things that fall into that. Identify your needs and prioritize. Think about all the personas and walk through those workflows. At least take a second to walk through it and think about what that experience is. Develop that strategy.
Oh, wait, I'm going to add something there.
Sorry.
When you're walking through the workflows, talk to somebody else that you work with. Walk it through with more than one person. They may have a different perspective than you have, and it may actually really improve your event regardless. So go ahead and take that time and work with your coworkers and get their input as well. Hey, what else am I missing? Or, oh, right, I hadn't thought about that. Add it in.
Yeah. Use some sort of documentation. In essence, if you're doing this, you're building that documentation. And again, it doesn't have to be an RFP. Conduct simple research of the company before you engage in the RFP, and always engage in respect.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.